What's up, everybody? Charlie Marlow here. Wanted to jump on and do a quick video on RFK Jr., give everybody some of my thoughts. The reason I'm doing this is we posted a clip from our podcast, Everybody Settle Down, basically about 10 minutes talking about RFK Jr. We got a lot of people watching it relative to our channel, a lot of people commenting, and so I wanted to kind of explain further. First of all, this is true. I want to give a shout out to the RFK Jr. supporters that comment on YouTube. I mean this. I've been doing YouTube for over 3 years, bunch of different channels. You guys are some of the most thoughtful and conscientious commenters. Like, I'm not going to name names, but supporters of other candidates, in my opinion, are not as reasonable. And since we posted that video, it's really stuck out to me that the commenters were very upbeat, very positive, very much talking more so about Bobby Kennedy and not as much ripping on Biden and Trump. I mean, there was some of that, but again, I have a lot of experience in viewing comments from Trump supporters, Biden supporters, and I'm telling you, it was refreshing to see the Bobby Kennedy Jr. supporters and kind of how they interact here on the video. So another thing is, we do these podcasts. I don't even remember exactly what I say. I certainly don't remember what Eric says. I don't even remember what I say. So some people are kind of saying, oh, you guys, you need to do your homework and blah, blah, blah. And I don't even know if you're coming after me or Eric or both of us, but I just thought I would sit down here on this beautiful day in St. Louis, Missouri, and explain kind of my thoughts on Bobby Kennedy Jr. First of all, I had heard of this guy, obviously, for years. He's a Kennedy. I've heard about him for years. I think when he did his podcast with Joe Rogan, was it like a year ago, year and a half ago, whenever that was? So I watched that whole deal. And I thought the way Joe Rogan introduced that was really smart. I'm not this guy who's like obsessed with Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan's very talented. I like listening to a lot of his podcasts. I do. But he basically said, look, man, I always thought you were just a quack. I thought you were this anti-vaxxer crazy person. But then, I started to read and I started to watch your interviews, and then you talk to him and he's like, no. And after I watched that 3 hours, it was about 3 hours, I think, with Joe Rogan, I thought the same thing. I just assumed from headlines over the years, when you hear all this anti-vaxxer stuff, and that's not saying I agree with everything the dude says, but I assumed that this guy was crazy. And then I keep watching just tons of his podcasts. And I went through a period probably like within the last year, but to be fair, not as much in the last like 3-4 months. Just an aside, my main job is working basically on the Kenny Wallace YouTube channel, which is hardcore NASCAR. So when the NASCAR season starts, I'm like balls to the wall NASCAR. So I have not listened to as many podcasts in the last, let's say 3-4 months as I did in the last year, basically starting with the winter and go back. I will say this though. First of all, I love that Bobby Kennedy Jr. does so many podcasts, sits down, hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours. A lot of candidates aren't doing that. Another guy that did that a lot was Vivek. Again, not saying I agree with everything Vivek says, but I love the dudes who sit down, they do the podcast, and they can really explain themselves. It takes a long time to explain complex topics. So by the way, again, this is another tangent. You'll realize I always go off on a tangent. Once you do so many podcasts, though, too, it's hard not to tell the same stories. It's hard not to repeat yourself. Like, it's hard to get new content after you've done everybody's podcast. And in his defense, Bobby Kennedy Jr. and his wife, Cheryl, who I love Curb Your Enthusiasm, one of my favorite shows, maybe my favorite comedy of all time, right up there with Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Love Curb, love Cheryl as an actress and from what I've seen when she sits down and does these podcasts. After a while, though, like, you start to hear the same stories. This happens for everybody. I've worked in the media for 20 years. I've been on the radio for like 16 years. It's impossible not to tell the same stories over and over and over. You forget even if you've told them on this format, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I watched the 3 hours with Rogan. I watched him with Bill Maher. I think that was an hour and a half, 2 hours. I watched him and Cheryl, I believe, with Tim Dillon. And I love Tim Dillon. This is going back maybe a year, 6 months. I can't even remember. I'm sure I've seen him on many other podcasts. I can't remember. And after a while, again, if you've consumed 10 hours of anybody, let's say you watch 3 to 4 to 5 podcasts of RFK Jr., and you've now consumed 10 hours of his talk, you're starting to hear the same stories over and over again, which is fine. So there's that. What I'm trying to say is, after just thinking, okay, he's just a quack, he's crazy, he's a nut job, he's an anti-vaxxer, I watch him for 10 hours, 12 hours on all these podcasts, and I'm thinking to myself, like, where's the crazy? Where's the craziness? Where's the nut job? I don't see that at all. I don't feel that. He seems like a very reasonable person. Even if you disagree with him, he explains himself. Like, I don't agree with everything with his vaccine standpoint, especially with COVID. I think basically both sides were pretty close to equally screwing up COVID, in my opinion. I don't even want to get into that debate. We can maybe later. But big picture, in terms of for-profit big pharma, I mean, look what happened with OxyContin. And then here's the other part. This is personal for me on the vaccine level, because if you hear RFK Jr. talking about, look, back in '86 when they passed that act where corporations were no longer liable for injuries from vaccines. I believe it was 1986, Reagan administration. You can look that up. I can't remember the exact name of the act. I think it was like the childhood prevention, something like that. You can look it up. But anyway, the way that a lot of these, whether it's food allergies and all that, eczema, there's a lot of stuff that really spiked after that as they added vaccines to the schedule. And so, just a personal story, my son is super food allergic, has really bad eczema. He's 3 years old. We just started going to this food institute in frickin' Long Beach, California. We're gonna have to go quarterly for probably 5 years. We just started about a month ago because my son is allergic to everything. Peanuts, tree nuts, dairy, I mean dogs, but food-wise, like literally everything. Every nut, dairy, all that. It's a million things. Like I said, some kids go to this food allergy institute for 2 years. My son is gonna go, they said, probably for 5. That shows you how bad his allergies are. And he's fine. Developmentally, he's perfect. He's a big kid, he's healthy, but just food allergies causes eczema. He scratches himself, he bleeds. Sometimes his skin can look really bad. It's improving, but we're managing it. So anyway, when you have a kid like that, you start to listen more as he talks about food allergies and how they've increased. Basically, there's a kind of a line right with that 1986 piece of legislation that was passed. I also just think his messaging is very positive. And it goes back to what I said, where I feel like his supporters are very positive. I feel like his supporters also seem to be very open-minded people, which I consider myself a very open-minded person. I grew up a Democrat. I'm not voting for Trump or Biden this time around. Like, I'm not saying I'm going to register as an independent, which I might. I think the two-party system is destroying this country. So I think everybody should actually send a message and register as an independent moving forward. But I'm still, at the most part, I'm like an old school Democrat, but I feel like Democrats have also went insane. I think Republicans have gone insane on many issues too. So I'm gonna kind of take the Bill Maher line, where I'm 42 years old. I don't feel like I've changed at all. I feel like these parties have changed. Like, they've gotten more extreme. I've stayed the same. I'm just a normal dude who grew up in Toledo, Ohio. I lived in Michigan 3 times. I went to college in the middle of Illinois in Peoria. I've lived in Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri for 16 years. Not exactly like super liberal places, right? Pretty much like Midwest my whole life. So anyway, I also feel like his messaging is super positive. He's really speaking to, especially young people. I don't consider myself young because I'm a millennial, I guess. I don't want to be a millennial, but I guess I am. And I feel like our generation, millennials, are actually doing really well if you really kind of go by the numbers. I mean, boomers are doing unbelievable on the whole. Of course, there's outliers. I feel like my generation is doing pretty damn good, especially if you're able to buy your house before COVID. And a lot of people were, again, of my generation. A lot of those people are invested in the stock market. And so all of these huge gains we've seen post-COVID in the real estate market, in the stock market, we've benefited from all that. And, the net worth skyrockets. Obviously, we're all impacted by inflation, but it's the younger generation, I don't even know what they're called, whatever the 20-somethings are. Those are the folks who are not yet probably exposed to the stock market. They probably don't own their home. I didn't own a condo until I was, I think, 30. So those are the folks who basically they're getting smoked by inflation. And also, they can't, like, I'm getting smoked by inflation. Everybody's getting smoked. My family, I mean, everybody is getting smoked by inflation. But if you also say, okay, look at the value of your house, look at the value of your stock market portfolio, you can say, okay, look, inflation sucks, but we've very much benefited from the last 4 years, whatever you want to call it, basically post-COVID. So I feel like RFK Jr. really speaks to those 20-somethings who feel like they've gotten a raw deal. I agree. It's too hard to live. It's too hard to go to college. Then you get out, you have student debt, and somebody wants to give you a job for $35,000. Your job's getting replaced by AI, whatever it is. You're trying to buy a home, maybe even probably younger millennials. And man, I talked to so many people trying to buy a house when COVID first started, and it took them 2-3 years. And I have a small rental property business, and I got lucky, man. We started all this in 2016. We stopped buying in 2020. Haven't bought anything since 2020. We got in when the interest rates were really good. Got a line of credit at like 4%. That same line of credit, which I don't even use anymore, but it's at 9%. I think it's 9.25. That shows you how hard it is if you're trying to make money in the real estate business. And again, another tangent there, but I kind of know about the real estate market a little bit. I've been doing it on the side for about 8 years. So just imagine you're trying to get your first home and your interest rate is 7%. I think my first condo, I think the interest rate was 3.6, maybe 4. I can't even remember. I can't remember. It was like 3.6, 4-ish. I feel like we got a lot of ARMs for our rental properties, right around 3.6 or 4 from about 2018, 2019, 2020 until COVID hit. And again, I'm saying all of this because I truly feel for those 20-somethings, teenagers, I mean, not high school kids, but like if you're in the workforce, if you work a trade, if you're in college, if you're coming out of college, and I do feel like you've gotten a raw deal. Now, I also think it's going to get better. I think we're going through a really weird environment. The whole country and world is post-COVID. Just with interest rates, inflation, and all that, with all the crazy COVID spending, with all the supply chain disruptions, like it was really bad. Like it's been bad. I think with each month we get away from COVID, it is going to get better. I understand people saying, hey, we want it to get better faster. I keep going on tangents, but this is about RFK Jr. So I just feel like RFK Jr. is really speaking about those issues. He's talking to those people, their grocery bills, not being able to buy a home. He has the idea of, and I've heard the story many times where he said, hey, if your uncle can co-sign for you, how about Uncle Sam co-signs for you? You get a better mortgage rate for your first time home purchase. I think that's a great idea. I remember during the Bush administration, I feel like my sister and her husband at the time got a big credit to buy a home. This was post 2008 when the housing market had collapsed and all that. So yeah, I don't know. I think RFK Jr. is a really smart dude. I like that he's fit, for an older dude. I mean, Biden is, what is he, 82, and he's like really 95. Let's be real. Joe Biden, he's absolutely deteriorating. We're all seeing it. Donald Trump is in better shape than Biden, but he's still pretty old, and he acts like a child in my estimation. But then RFK Jr., he's kind of the adult in the room, and that's why I really want to see him on the debate stage. I said with Eric, if RFK Jr. was polling around 10, I said if he gets to debate, he's going to shoot up to 15. He's going to push Ross Perot numbers, which I think was that 19%? I can't even remember. Whatever it was, 16, 18, 19% during those Clinton years. I feel like Ross Perot got that type of support one year. I think if RFK Jr. gets a fair shake and he's on the debate stage for about 3 debates versus Trump Biden, I think his number is only going to go up. I also think there's so many people who are just, I don't like Biden, I don't like Trump. I'm either going to not vote for president or I'm going to park my vote. And not just park it. I know some of you guys have kind of pushed back at that language. Not just park my vote like I'm going to default to RFK Jr. No, actually I like RFK Jr. I like his message. I'm going to support RFK Jr. So my wife also just loves RFK Jr., loves what he stands for. If you think I listen to a lot of podcasts, I bet you she listens to every single one, nonstop. Loves the dude. I'm trying to think if I covered it all. Either way, thanks for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe. We're trying to get this channel going. It's starting to get some momentum. We have a members program, but tell people about it. Put it in your group text. Put it on social media. We're going to do a podcast every week. We're going to ramp it up. The more people watch, the more we're going to do. If this starts really going, I'm going to devote, and Eric and I are going to devote more time to doing this, on a more consistent basis. So, yeah, I think that was everything. I didn't write anything down, but I wanted to hit on several things about RFK Jr., and I think I did, so I'll shut up. This video is long enough, about 16 minutes. There you go. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. There are my thoughts on RFK Jr. All right. Peace out.